Before we start this week's video, we want to note that we do not think that the show Dexter shares any responsibility for these horrible murders. We feel that blaming a television show for crimes cheapens the conversation about violence in society. It also shifts the blame away from personal responsibility and mental health issues if the person is not capable of being personally responsible. Instead, these are damaged people who recognize something in Dexter Morgan that they saw in themselves, and instead of restraining and controlling those urges, like Dexter does, they acted on their disturbing compulsions, and as a result, innocent people tragically lost their lives. Number 5. Mark Howe. In the months leading up to July 2013, 21-year-old care worker Mark Howe had become obsessed with Dexter Morgan. He used a picture of Dexter as his Facebook profile picture, and he told people that he wished he was Dexter. Howe also scoured the internet for information on Dexter's weapons, like his knife. In the early morning hours of July 26, 2013, Howe's mother, 48-year-old Katrina Wardle, was asleep in her bed. Howe grabbed a 12-inch long knife and went into her bedroom. He stabbed her 53 times in the face, the chest, and the neck. Unfortunately, Wardle lived through most of the attack, and it was the totality of her wounds that killed her. Howe was arrested after police found a trail of blood leading from the murder scene to a cash machine at a gas station. Howe says that he does not know why he killed his mother and claims that he has amnesia surrounding the murder. Howe was found guilty, and he was sentenced to a minimum of 21 years and 6 months in prison. Number 4. Jessica Lynn Lopez. On April 13, 2012, at 7:50 p.m., 22-year-old Brittany Kilgore of Fallbrook, California, sent a text message to a friend simply saying, "Help." After that message, Kilgore went missing. 4 days later, the police were called to a hotel room in Fallbrook. There, they found 28-year-old Jessica Lynn Lopez, who had attempted suicide. In the room, there was a note that was labeled, "Pigs, read this." It was a 7-page suicide note, and in it, Lopez gave the location of Kilgore's body. Later that day, Kilgore's nude and mutilated body was found in a ravine. She had been bound, zapped with a stun gun, and she had been strangled to death. It was also apparent that someone had tried to dismember the body. Lopez survived the suicide attempt, and she, along with her 2 housemates, Luis Ray Perez, 49, and Dorothy Marilingo, 40, were arrested for the murder. The trio was heavily involved in the world of S&M, and the house that they shared had a dungeon inside of it. A former housemate said that the 3 of them had plotted to kidnap a woman for their own sexual purposes, but she had just assumed it was a fantasy. It's believed that on the day she went missing, Kilgore agreed to go on a dinner cruise with Perez. However, instead of taking her to the cruise, Perez took her to his house and took her into the house's dungeon. Once inside, she was tortured and killed by Perez, Marilingo, and Lopez. One of the main pieces of evidence in the trial of the trio was Lopez's suicide note. She said that when she strangled Kilgore, it was as if my idol Dexter had spoken directly to me. Lopez also wrote, "I made a few attempts to chop her up like Dexter with Master's power tools, but I was afraid it was too loud and it sucked at cutting flesh." All 3 were found guilty, and they were sentenced to life in prison in November 2015. Number 3. Stephen Miles. 16-year-old Stephen Miles of Surrey, England had narcissistic personality traits, and he was on the autism spectrum. He was also obsessed with Dexter, and he wanted to be just like him. However, just like the other people on this list, and unlike Dexter, Miles didn't kill someone who was evil. On January 14, 2014, Miles met his 17-year-old girlfriend, Elizabeth Thomas, at school, and they went back to his family's home. Miles said that once he was alone with Thomas in the house, his dark passenger, who he called Ed, told him to kill Thomas. So Miles picked up a kitchen knife and he stabbed his girlfriend in the neck and in the back before plunging the knife into her skull, where he left it. He then got tools from his father's tree trimming business and cut off Thomas's arms and legs and wrapped them in cellophane. He then put the remains into a garbage pail in his bedroom and tried to clean up the murder scene. His sister came home about an hour after the murder, and Miles said that Ed made him do something bad. Miles was arrested, and the police said it was clear that the 16-year-old had tried to emulate Dexter. Miles was sentenced to at least 25 years in prison. Number 2. Andrew Conley. Andrew Conley, who lived just outside of Rising Sun, Indiana, said that he started to fantasize about killing people when he was in the 8th grade. Just a few years later, on the night of November 28, 2009, when Conley was 17 years old, he was wrestling with his 10-year-old brother Connor. Conley got his brother into a chokehold, and Connor begged for him to stop, but Conley wouldn't let go until Connor had passed out. Conley then dragged his brother's body into the kitchen, where he strangled him with his bare hands for about 20 minutes. He then put 2 plastic bags over Connor's head and smashed his head several times on the kitchen floor. The coroner would later say that Connor could have lived for minutes or even hours after the plastic bags went over his head. Conley loaded the body of his 10-year-old brother into the trunk of his car and drove over to his girlfriend's house. Once there, he gave her a promise ring and they watched the movie The Green Mile. His girlfriend said that he had never seemed happier. After the movie, Conley dumped his brother's body in the woods and then covered it with some sticks and some leaves. Conley returned home the next morning and he told his mother that Connor was at their grandmother's house. Conley then grabbed a knife and went into his father's bedroom and stood over him while he slept. His father awoke and saw Conley standing over him with something shiny in his hand, but he put it in his pocket and walked out of the room quickly. Conley then spent the rest of the day watching football, and his mom said that he was in a good mood. Later that day, when his parents told him to go pick up his brother, Conley went to the police station where he confessed to the murder without showing a glimmer of remorse. During his interrogation, Conley said that he really identified with Dexter, and he said he felt just like him. Conley also told other people in the weeks leading up to the murder that he wanted to be like Dexter. Sadly, Conley missed one of the main things that makes Dexter a likable character, which is that he doesn't murder innocent children. In fact, Conley acted more like one of Dexter's victims than Dexter himself. In the end, Conley was sentenced to life in prison in October 2010. Number 1. Håvard Nyfløt. In 2010, in Oslo, Norway, taxi driver Shamraz Khan approached gas station attendant and bodybuilder Håvard Nyfløt with an unusual request. Khan offered Nyfløt money to kidnap a woman that Khan had been stalking for years, 26-year-old shop manager Faiza Ashraf. Khan wanted Nyfløt to torture Ashraf and then kill her for rejecting him. And Nyfløt, who had a large gambling debt, agreed to help Khan. However, after agreeing to kidnap, torture, and murder Ashraf, Nyfløt watched a few episodes of Dexter. That's when Nyfløt realized that Khan would be someone that Dexter would kill, so he decided that Khan needed to die. Nyfløt bought some supplies and then he dug a small grave in the woods for Khan. His plan was to lure Khan to the woods and then knock him out when he showed up. He then hung his body from a tree and cut it apart. However, to make it even more perfect than Dexter, as Nyfløt put it, he decided that Ashraf needed to watch the whole murder. So on the morning of February 3rd, 2010, Nyfløt found Ashraf waiting for the bus and he forced her into the trunk of his car. When he did, she asked why he was doing it, and Nyfløt said that he was paid to kidnap her. However, Nyfløt forgot to take away her cell phone. Ashraf called the police, but tragically, they couldn't trace her phone. Ashraf did tell the police that she thought that Khan was behind the kidnapping because he had been stalking her for years. With Ashraf in the trunk, Nyfløt drove to the wooded area where he dug the grave. Once there, Nyfløt told Ashraf about his plans to kill Khan. However, Ashraf said that she didn't want Khan to be killed. Instead, she wanted Nyfløt to knock him out. As Ashraf was being led into the woods, she ran away, and Nyfløt chased her. Nyfløt caught her, wrapped her head in duct tape, bound her hands and feet, and put her back in the trunk. When he opened the trunk later, he found Ashraf dead. She had asphyxiated to death. Nyfløt's new plan was to take Ashraf's hair and plant it on Khan's body after he killed him. However, before Nyfløt could get to Khan, he was arrested. He confessed and Nyfløt was arrested a week later. Both Khan and Nyfløt were found guilty of kidnapping and murder. Khan was sentenced to 19 years in prison and Nyfløt was given 18 years. Thanks for watching this week's video, and we apologize if we butchered the pronunciation of any names. If you like this video, we'd love it if you gave us a thumbs up and subscribe. We post a new video every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, if you like this video and want to watch another video about a killer who was inspired by Dexter, check out our video 5 Terrifying Cases of Catfishing. The person who was number 1 was heavily influenced by Dexter, and he even built his own kill room. But that's all for this week. Thanks again for watching.